I have a bit of trouble describing how this fish is cooked. It's sort of steamed, poached. There's no liquid, so it's not poached. Pan-steamed, I'll call it. Anyway, whatever. Start off with some salmon steaks. I've got 3 there. They're about 180 grams each. And I'm then just going to cut it into 3 pieces each. Just like that. Now, there are different ways you can do this. If you get a large piece of salmon, which is most of the easiest, but I'd already cut these into steaks, you cut it on the diagonal, so you get longer pieces of salmon. That's mostly, to be quite honest, is mostly the best way. But this will work just as well. But, you know, if you're doing it at home, I think I'd advocate you getting a piece of salmon. About 1 kilo for 4, I'd say. And what we then do is pretty simple stuff, but it can be varied to suit yourself. So, you know, you don't have to follow exactly this recipe. You can add your thing. Well, I say that all the time, don't I? I think you know by now that I don't get upset if you make your own variations and call it your recipe. What we now do is just get a heavy bottom pan and we just brush that with melted butter. And we then lay the fish in there. Just in one layer. You can overlap it slightly if you've got quite a bit of fish, but not much. I'm just trying to get one layer in here, and this will work pretty well. I think I've got exactly the right amount of fish for the size of the pan. See, I knew that. I tell some fibs sometimes, I think. And I'll just turn that over. Not that that fish is harmful, because we're obviously using exactly the same stuff in the pan on the fish. And I've just got some cherry tomatoes. These are quite large ones, so I'm cutting them into 8 or 4 each half. But if they're small ones, just cut them into 4. But you certainly don't want huge chunks. And that will be plenty, because I also don't want to overdo it. So we just scatter that over the top of your fish. I've also got some spring onions, which I'm going to just slice quite finely. You don't want to put any vegetables here that take a lot of cooking, because we're going to cook this very briefly, so don't start putting carrots or broccoli or anything like that saying, oh, I'll do a 1-pot dish. It has to be something simple. You certainly could add anchovies, olives, sun-dried tomatoes, things like that if you wanted to, or semi-dried tomatoes rather than sun-dried. And we just scatter that over the top as well. And then think about some seasoning. Sea salt flakes, quite a generous amount. Don't get silly about it, but you do want a pretty good amount. And some freshly ground pepper, and also a good squeeze of fresh lemon juice. And now, this is where we come to sort of the steaming side of it. I've got a piece of glad bake there, and it's cut to fit that frying pan. You just turn the frying pan upside down and run a knife around it on top of the glad bake. And I'm just going to butter that reasonably generously, and then put that into the pan, pressing it down on our fish. Now that's butter side down, of course. Whack a top on that. Turn that heat down a little bit. I want it sort of medium temperature. I don't want it too cold. And I'll cook that for about 4 or 5 minutes. That's all. And then we'll come back and finish it off. All right, this is looking pretty good now. So let's just whip that top off and have a look. Yeah, very nice. Good. Still want it to be opaque in the centre, so don't overcook it. And now comes the difficult part, getting it out. I normally just take out a couple pieces of it, just like that. It's very hard to keep it exactly even, but we'll have a shot. One more piece, I think, don't you? Make it neat. Let's just grab a spoon for some of those lovely juices. You know, the butter and the lemon juice, and obviously some of the fish juices themselves. Neaten that up a little bit. Sprinkle a little bit of parsley on it. I'm making a lot of noise here. I'm sort of dropping everything, aren't I? But what I'm going to do is just serve it with some very simply dressed rocket or spinach or any kind of leaves that you like. Watercress, I don't mind. But just to give it some nice greenery. And just keep in mind, even though I think the butter is lovely, if you want to, you could use olive oil instead. That's for the base of the fry pan and for the cooking of the top. All right, simple stuff, beautiful flavours. It also looks good, doesn't it?